Albert Einstein was dogmatic and close-minded. Now, I know this will offend most people who don't know how to think for themselves, so let me jump right to the evidence for my claim. And by the way, if evidence doesn't persuade you because you're actually dumb and just blindly agree with whatever anyone with a degree says, then wait till the end of this video where a university-accredited engineer and physicist agrees with what I'm saying. Now, I'm not here to deny that Einstein was a genius and a revolutionary. No doubt he was. But for every revolutionary, there's a new revolution that eventually arrives to expose the flaws or limitations in old worldviews. Isaac Newton, for example, with all of his genius, was surpassed by the more accurate worldview that Einstein created many years later. But even Einstein was surpassed by the creation of quantum physics during the early 20th century. And how did Albert Einstein, a genius among men during his time, react to the implications of quantum physics? Well, he reacted like a closed-minded, dogmatic person, almost in a religious way because of his unwillingness to accept new empirical evidence. Now, what the fuck am I talking about, you ask? Well, quantum physics revealed that, at the most fundamental level of our reality, things are not as mechanistic and predictable as we intuitively think. You see, Albert Einstein, along with most scientists today, have a particular worldview known as Newtonianism, also known as mechanistic determinism. This predominant view in science states that the universe is like a giant clock, bound by perfectly causal mechanistic relationships. Anything that can happen and will happen can be explained through causal relationships. If you drop a ball off the edge of a roof, there are perfect mechanistic measurable explanations for what caused the ball to drop. This view is reflected in the old billiard ball analogy, where as long as you know all the forces, mass, friction, etc., then you can technically predict not only the outcomes of a game of pool, but of the entire universe itself. This view that the universe is entirely predictable and deterministic is also reflected in Einstein's famous quote, "God doesn't play dice." He was referring to the implications of quantum physics, which prove that the universe at the most fundamental level does not behave like a clock, is not mechanistic and deterministic the way most scientists believe. Instead, the universe is actually non-local, random, and essentially contradictory to every intuitive belief we once had about the universe. At the quantum level, which is the foundation of our own reality, a single particle can exist in two separate places simultaneously. Also, quantum entanglement proves that two particles separated by millions of miles are interconnected, and that if you affect one of them, the other one is instantaneously affected too, even though they are separated by millions of miles. That means faster than the speed of light. We're talking about instantaneous here. Even more puzzling is the double slit experiment, which shows that the act of just observing photons determines the state of the photon as either a particle or a wave. In essence, quantum physics, which is the most accurate and fundamental analysis of our reality to date, proves that, contrary to mainstream science's Newtonian worldview, our reality is not mechanistic and deterministic, but rather a randomized one that cannot be grasped in terms of measurements and traditional means of analysis. As the double slit experiment proves, the mere act of being conscious of reality affects reality. Which of course makes perfect sense, since nothing can be said to exist without a conscious being there to experience it. Existence is a function of consciousness, but that's a whole other video which you can click right here to watch. Now, if you think this quantum physics stuff is bullshit, well, number one, quantum experimentation is as scientific and empirical as any field, and number two, modern physicists and engineers are now creating quantum computers that harness the power and truth of quantum physics to create computers that are exponentially times more powerful than anything we have today. This is not pseudoscience. This is no woo-woo new age bullshit. This is hardcore math, science, and physics, even if some dogmatically closed-minded scientists refuse to accept the empirical truth. Scientists like Einstein, who in the face of the implications of quantum physics chose to deny the empirical evidence. His famous quote, "God doesn't play dice," was in response to the experiments from quantum physics that show inherent randomness at the most fundamental level of reality. Einstein's hostility towards quantum physics was evident in his own words. He called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. Now, you don't need to be a scientist to know that the term spooky is a purely subjective, opinionated word. Quantum entanglement is not actually spooky. It's only spooky to people like Einstein who refuse to accept the implications of quantum physics because their old Newtonian worldview, which says our universe is like a giant predictable mechanistic clock, contradicted the evidence. Einstein was also quoted as saying, "I can't accept quantum mechanics because I like to think the moon is there even if I am not looking at it." Again, you don't need to be a scientist to notice the blatantly obvious, opinionatedly biased word choice. I like to think? What do you mean you like to think? Science isn't about what you like, it's about what is true. And sadly, it seems a large portion of science today is full of people who like to believe in old dogmas instead of choosing to be open-minded to the empirical data. Albert Einstein was dogmatically closed-minded, and just like believing the earth was flat, his dogma will gradually be eviscerated as science moves forward and as quantum physics continues to pioneer our futures with its implications and with the onset of quantum computers. Now, as I promised at the start of the video, for those of you who are dumb and don't know how to think for yourselves, and thus only trust people if they have a degree from a university, by the way, that gets most of its funding from corporations and government, no conflict of interest there, then here's a university-accredited engineer and physicist from MIT who agrees with the premise of this video.
Famously, there's this phenomenon where people who get their Nobel Prize for quantum mechanics, like Einstein got his Nobel Prize for quantum mechanics, never believed in it. God doesn't play dice, he says. He was wrong, right? God does play dice, as we'll see in just a second. So quantum mechanics is, and of course, one of the reasons that he didn't want to believe in it, because it was counterintuitive, and if anybody had the right to trust their intuition, it was Einstein. So his intuition told him wrong, it can't be true, and so he trusted it, and he was wrong as a result.
Andrew from South Carolina took the red pill, and he says, "It works exactly as advertised. I took it during meditation and I could finally focus." Jessica from California took the red pill, and she says, "I felt calm and focused. I am pretty creative, but after taking it, the ideas were flowing." People from all over the world have taken the red pill. It's your turn to choose. Click the screen to learn more.